What if the pain you're going through right now, the heartache, the frustration, the struggles, what if it's not all just random? What if it's actually part of a bigger picture, a divine purpose you can't quite see yet? Take a moment. Think about your most significant relationships, your family, your friends, your romantic partners, or even your relationship with yourself. How many times have you experienced hurt in those connections? How many times have you questioned whether you're suffering because of something you've done or whether it's part of something greater, something ordained by God? I want to talk to you today about a crucial distinction, the difference between God ordained suffering and self inflicted pain. And I promise by the end of this talk, you will see your relationships in a brand new light, perhaps in ways that will change everything for you. Let's begin with something deeply foundational: God ordained suffering. Now, I know the word suffering doesn't sound like the best thing to talk about, but stick with me. God doesn't waste anything, especially your pain. The truth is, there are moments in our relationships where we are called to endure hardship, and it's precisely in those moments that our spiritual growth, our patience, and our character are tested and strengthened. This isn't some random cruel experience. It's God shaping you, it's God molding you. Think about the story of Joseph in the Bible. This young man was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. He suffered greatly for years, but in the end, all that suffering wasn't random. It wasn't a cruel twist of fate. It was purposeful. It was God's way of preparing Joseph for a greater calling, a greater purpose. Joseph had to go through pain to lead a nation and save lives. Now, let's reflect for a moment. Are you in a place of suffering in your own relationships right now? Maybe you feel betrayed, maybe you feel unheard, or maybe you've been walking a long road of loneliness. But what if, just like Joseph, this season isn't the end of your story? What if, what if it's shaping you, refining you, and setting you up for something greater? Think about it this way: God uses suffering to bring us closer to Him, to help us rely on His wisdom, His strength, His comfort. God ordained suffering teaches us that our pain isn't pointless. It's not something to escape from. It's something to lean into. We're knowing that we are being prepared for something far greater than we can see in the present moment. But let's talk about the other side, the flip side of the coin. Not all pain is from God. There is a kind of suffering that we create ourselves through our choices, our pride, our unhealthy attachments, and sometimes even our refusal to learn the lessons God is trying to teach us. Self inflicted pain happens when we continually ignore the warning signs of our relationships, when we refuse to set healthy boundaries, when we choose to stay in toxic situations because we are afraid of being alone, or we cling to relationships that drain us instead of growing us. You see, self inflicted pain often comes from our refusal to face uncomfortable truths. It's when we stay in situations that we know aren't good for us, thinking we can fix the other person or change the circumstances. Imagine someone staying in a relationship where there is constant emotional abuse, justifying it with reasons like, well, they'll change, I can handle it, I'm strong. The longer that person stays, the more they inflict pain on themselves. Self inflicted pain often results from unforgiveness, pride, and holding on to past hurts instead of seeking healing. It's when we refuse to let go of the bitterness that is poisoning our hearts. It's when we stay stuck even when God is calling us to move forward. Ask yourself, are you carrying pain that's a result of your own choices? Are you staying in unhealthy relationships out of fear, guilt, or false hope? Do you recognize the difference between when God is refining you and when you are simply refusing to let go of something that's hurting you? So, how can you tell the difference between God ordained suffering and self inflicted pain? It's not always easy, but there are clues, there are signs. First, God ordained suffering leads to growth. It might be uncomfortable, it might even feel unbearable at first, but in the end, you come out stronger. You gain wisdom, humility, and a deeper understanding of God's love. You begin to see things from a different perspective. And even your relationships are transformed by the lessons learned through that suffering. In contrast, self-inflicted pain leaves you feeling stuck. You keep going in cycles, repeating the same mistakes and feeling like you're being drained emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. It doesn't lead to growth, it leads to stagnation. If you feel trapped, like there is no way out, or like you're fighting the same battles over and over without any breakthroughs, then it might be time to ask yourself some hard questions. Are you choosing to stay in this pain, or is God leading you through it? Here is a practical way to discern: prayer and reflection. When you pray and ask God for clarity, He'll show you whether your suffering is part of His refining process or if it's time to walk away from self inflicted pain. God's peace often comes with guidance. If you are feeling unrest, confusion, or a lack of peace in a relationship, it could be a sign that you're holding on to something you need to let go of. Let me close by saying this: pain is inevitable, but how you respond to it is what will define you. Whether the pain is from God's refining fire or self inflicted wounds, you have a choice. You can either let it destroy you or you can allow it to transform you. If your pain is God ordained, trust that He's shaping you for something incredible. Trust that He's with you every step of the way. Keep your eyes on the bigger picture, even when it feels like you're walking through the wilderness. If your pain is self-inflicted, it's never too late to make a change. You have the power to step away from toxic relationships. You have the power to forgive. You have the power to reclaim your peace. You can choose healing over hurt. And as we close, remember this: you are not defined by your pain. You are defined by how you rise above it, how you learn from it, and how you choose to let it transform you. So, take a moment. Take a moment today and ask yourself, what is the source of my pain? What is the source of the pain in my relationships? Is it a part of God's plan to refine me? Or am I holding on to something that's hurting me more than helping me? Whatever you find, take the next step forward in faith, because your greatest season of healing and transformation might just be one decision away. Thank you.